Hey, it's Isaiah here. I'm going to quickly show you how to do stop motion in Adobe Premiere. A lot of the settings actually work in Adobe After Effects. And of course, the menus might be a little bit different and how you end up doing it in the end. But for the most part, setting up a scene and getting it going is not too much different. But we're going to focus on the Premiere here. So what I have here is 10 different short little clips. They're individual frames shot from an 8 megapixel camera. It was for a digital photo project that, that I was working on, and I needed a bunch of different frames, and I had to pick the best ones and so forth. And my series is called People Watching because I took hundreds of pictures just watching people walk around. And it was pretty interesting, and maybe at some point I'll actually show you the final product. But these are just my raw files. They're converted from raw files to TIFFs, but they're still, big enough. Let's see here, 22 megapixel. So, sorry, 22 megabytes. It's an 8 megapixel camera. I misspoke. But the total size of this is 17.8 gigabytes. So if you have whatever you're working on, doesn't matter what it is, and it's TIFFs, whatever, you want to make sure that it is the right size before importing it, because I found that Premiere has issues, at least for me, and extra work to get it to the right size. So this is actually the same picture, but the problem is that it's much larger than 1080, and I'm too lazy, especially since I'm just doing a tutorial video, to batch process them back to 1080 or crop them or what have you. And also I wanted to make sure that it was 1080 taking up the full frame, because I didn't want to leave black bars on the side, because that wouldn't use the CPU all the way. Those black bars would go unused as far as CPU usage. And really this video is kind of showing how much it takes to do it. So anyways, back on course, if you open Adobe Premiere blankly, you're going to come across something called a sequence. If you happen to hit cancel or whatever, you would get to this area with nothing actually there. It would be blank. And that's fine, because all you do is, I'll hit cancel. What you do is just hit right click, new item, sequence, and I believe you can also do it up here, new sequence. And it doesn't matter. And all these presets we're going to ignore because we're working on a stop motion. So I have this set up already, but I'll quickly show you for one of them, and then we can play around in your future. For editing mode, you want to do custom. You want to set the frames. I have this video set for 15 frames a second because actually there's not enough video. It would be, 800 frames comes out to be, seconds worth. So I had to do 15 frames per second to make it worthy of anything. And you want to set your ratio to 1080 by, and then square pixels. Well, the pictures you took are in square pixel ratio. When you're doing film, whether it's actual film grain from negatives, or if you're doing a movie camera, a lot of times there's an option to set it to DV, which is actually your pixels are elongated. They're kind of like rectangles instead of squares. That is good when you're working in that sense, but in true nature, your videos are going to end up being widescreen like this, especially if you're going to put on a Blu-ray disc or a DVD disc. If you're watching on the web, you can leave it 1:1 pixel, especially if you're going to share it. It doesn't matter. But in this case, I'm doing widescreen just to keep in touch with everything else. There is no option to do anything but 30 or 60 time code. So if you have 30 frames per second time code, the timing would be really strange looking. So I need frames. So it'll actually tell me all the frames I have. Audio, whatever audio you have. And preview window really depends on what type of preview you want to see. Usually I don't mess with it because, I don't care too much about the quality of my preview. I just want to make sure everything is in the right size. You would name it, you'd be all set. So, in actuality, if I click on this, it lets me click on it, and I go to sequence settings, here's all the settings I have set up for mine. And so every clip you import, this is how you do it. So what you want to do is right click, new item, and not right click, import. And I have one open already. You want to go to stop motion, and well, depending on what you have, you want to find your folder. Mine's called stop motion. Pick your thing. Doesn't matter what. You want to start in the first frame, and you want to go number still. So all these pictures are in order. You do the same thing. You get something called bulk utility, which actually allows you to rename all your files. You want those to be a copy because you don't want to ruin your originals, obviously. Those copies would, you can number them 1 through 1000, whatever you want. And you hit stills, and you hit open, and that's going to drop it over here. Now, the one thing you're going to notice that under frame rate is actually going to say 29.97 frames per second, and that is default for every single frame, for every single footage. The only way to fix that is to go to interpret footage, and you're going to set the frame rate that it thinks it needs to be. I set it for 15, so every frame, there's 15 frames in a second, because these are actually full still frames. It's not video footage where maybe one frame is a half a frame and the next frame is another half a frame. In stop motion, each frame is full, so that's why you're doing it this way. And if you do 30 frames a second, basically, is going to make your footage double the length. So, if I go up here, well, actually, it does half the length because there's less footage. But it messes with your timeline up there. You set the pixel ratio. So in this case, these are 1:1. This footage we're importing is 1:1 ratio pixels. But say somehow we had film negatives, we actually scanned in from a film reel. Those are going to be elongated because silver slip. The negatives are silver, and that little piece of silver is actually what gives you the film grain. So they're elongated. In any case, then you would just drop each one down on the timeline, which I've done here already, which goes up to 800. And so what you can do is actually set up multiple sequences. And if you were to save it like I did, I believe I saved it already. We'll save it again. So if you did that, and you go to Adobe encoder, you can actually import things. So if you went to add or import Premiere sequence, I do add. You find it, which would be right here for me. You open it, and when it loads it, it sees all the sequences. So I have 2 here, and it says, hey, you have 1 too. So you don't have to have Premiere open to do this. This media encoder is separate. So if you're really out of memory, you're really bogged down, seeing the preview and all that, you can actually just save it, close out Adobe Premiere, and just run this. And we're actually going to do that. The other option is to, let me close this, exit. Yeah, the other option is to actually go to export media, and I believe you have to click on the sequence you want to send out. Yes. And it's exactly the same thing. The difference is, it's showing you there's going to be bars on it or whatever. The difference is it just loads up the presets. Like if you were to click on the file, in the preset, you would see all the information inside of it. So I'm going to pause it, close this out, and I'm going to bring up Adobe Encoder, and we're going to quickly run through it and see what we can come out with. Alright, so I'm here on the Wikipedia page. It's a great information source. So the problem is here is that not all codecs are supported by 1080, or they don't support the right bit rate, or they don't support frames per second. The best way to find that out usually is to look down the levels, because for the longest time H.264, which is the competitor of VC1, they're both excellent formats, they're both used in Blu-ray, is that H.264 is accelerated by the video card. So if you have an NVIDIA video card, that has CUDA on it, that has support for CUDA, you're more likely to get really fast speeds doing it that way rather than using the CPU. And it really depends on what you're loading up, your sequence, so forth. So it's not always finite. So the longest time, level 4 came out, and that's when 1080 really came around. It's basically 1080, 30 frames a second or lower. And then now level 5 supports 4K resolution down here. You're probably going to be seeing this next year, you know, when next Blu-ray discs come out and all that. But it's basically the same idea, is that you are making sure it's right settings. So in our program, we're going to quickly set the settings, and I set them already, but I'll show you them. Presets. Yeah, okay, so it pulls it up. And it's really laggy because it's loading 17 gigs. For the most part, I use a preset of YouTube widescreen, and then under video, you need to set your levels 4 or higher, set your frames per second to what you want it set to. I set it down to 15 because that's our sequence. And then as far as media encoder and passes, you want to make sure you set them at what you want. I usually do, honestly, unless I'm really hitting a target bitrate, I usually just do one pass because I don't care about anything else, or you know, certain bit rate and all that. I'm just gonna let it be what it is for now. But when I upload this thing, I'm probably gonna mess around. I really encourage you to mess around with those settings too, because they're always gonna be different. And the other option is, when you're doing this, is you want to make sure that you are rendering it the highest quality you can. Screen compatibility, audio, whatever settings you need, make sure you have them set. And since I do have the Mercury Engine playback enabled in Premiere, this also is going to take advantage of my video card rendering it. If you do not want it to do it, or it keeps getting crashes and whatever, you have to disable it in Premiere or After Effects, and then in here it will automatically do it. So let me render these out, and I'll be right back. Alright, I'm back. So I rendered those out. It took a little bit longer than I thought. I think it's because I was messing around with my computer. But anyways, the custom setting took 7 minutes and 41 seconds. My CPU load didn't get above like 50%. So I really think it was pretty much waiting on the amount of space. 17 gigs takes a lot of memory up, and I really should have cut them down to the right size, and maybe put it on my RAM as a RAM drive. Anyways, the next one was basically the same thing, but the difference was I set it to one pass just to see how much faster it'd be. And you can see the difference between 2 passes and 1 passes is 1 pass is like a quarter of the time. And the final one is these two, for some reason, wouldn't use the GPU as offloading. I don't know why. Probably because the codec, level 4, didn't work. Even though NVIDIA says it's supported, level 4 does not working here. I am using an older Quadro card, so it's possible that it's just my card is not supported for these advanced functions. And lastly, I just used the default widescreen, and this pegged my video card to about 70% here and there. But like I said, even though it was 2 passes, it didn't take too much less time. So that's really all I have there for you guys. So next time you want to make videos in Adobe Premiere or After Effects, you can just check this out and see how fast it goes.